Good evening. Welcome to the June 14, 2022 meeting of the Newtown Township Trails and Greenways Committee. I'm reminding everyone that this meeting is being recorded. Secretary Cook, if you're there, could you please call the roll? Hello? Mine is. It doesn't work.
Yeah.
I'll read the roll.
Here, I can read the roll if you'd like.
John Custer here, Anthony DiVincenzo, absent. Aaron Cook. Okay.
My audio.
Okay, I'll mark her here. Amy Blegriff. Bethany Dunchisha.
Here.
Leah Archer. Absent. Joe Falcon. Present. Terry McCarthy.
Here.
And Mark Carr. Here. Also present are Township Manager Neese and Director Sharretts. May we have a moment of silence? Please rise and join in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Next item is public comment for agenda items only. Is there any public comment? Hearing none, we'll move on. Next item is the agenda. Do I hear a motion? Sure.
Aaron, can you try talking again, please?
Off the mute. I was trying to speak. Can you hear me now? I am here. No volume.
Try again.
I am here. Test, test, test. Can you hear me? I am not on mute. Can you hear me? Test, test, test.
That's it. Thank you.
Okay.
Welcome aboard.
Sorry about that.
Okay.
We're ready to go.
Next item is the agenda. Do I hear a motion to approve the agenda as written? Second? It's been moved and seconded. Any committee discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. All opposed? Motion carried unanimously. Next on the agenda are the minutes of the May 10, 2022 meeting. Does anyone have any changes?
There was I think, establishing 3 trail walks. I'm happy that she did that, but I don't remember it. So.
So it was I wasn't here for the May meeting, so I couldn't have done that in the last meeting. And we had established in the previous meeting some trail walks, and you kind of spearheaded that. So I don't know where the disconnect was, but there was some disconnect with that. I think it was like looking at trail.
And I would suggest maybe we, instead of your name, put Terry's name in.
Except
I don't know that we had.
Okay.
Actually, we need to resolve that maybe offline.
Okay.
When that.
Okay. So the only change to date would be instead of member Dunchisha being member McCarthy. Trail marks. All right. Do I hear a motion for approval of the amended minutes? Second? Been moved and seconded. Any board discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye. All opposed, motion carried unanimously. All right, next, we're in the area of presentations. We have a presentation from Steve Brook and Annie Thorne on Connect Edgemont. And Connect Edgemont is a brand new organization set up to promote walking trails in Edgemont. And they're off to a good start. I'd like to hear more. Go ahead.
Briefly introduce myself. Yeah.
And if you could.
Here, sure. I'm Steve Brook. I've been in the area forever. In fact, the same trails I'm running today in Ruby Creek Park for my Pencrest cross-country trails. So, and we've been residents out in Edgemont for 37 years. I was part, it was my wife and another person and myself. We were the Trails Committee of Edgemont Township, but that was about the extent of the connection. We just answered that they were interested in that group. We kind of worked independently. We weren't really part of the township. We had some degree of success in that, mostly on trying to make connections on the western side of the park. But my greatest claim to fame, I think, is going to be that I found Annie Thorne, working together with her in a civic association. I think that'll speak for itself when you meet Annie. So, Annie.
Good evening. My name is Annie Thorne. I've lived in Newtown Square almost my entire life, but it's been in Willistown Township and Edgemont Township. So just in the post office. I've never lived in Newtown Township, but definitely been very close to it my whole life. So as John mentioned, we represent Connect Edgemont. It's a residents group in Edgemont Township organized around promoting trails, open space, and promoting township community initiatives. So kind of being a goal to collaborate between residents and our township to promote the township's events and to have residents start thinking about how we can tell our township that it's important to us to be thinking about trails and open space protection. Right now, Edgemont Township is very small. We don't have a Parks and Rec Commission. We don't have an active recreation plan even. Fortunately, we do have a Delaware County Greenways grant to write a recreation plan this summer. So that is just going to get kicked off next week. Actions to date for Connect Edgemont. We started this spring a community hiking series, very similar to what you're talking about with your hikes, where we just pick a location, invite the community, hike with them, talk about the space. We have tried to be targeted in where we're going because Edgemont has Ridley Creek State Park, but we don't have any other preserves or parklands or trails. So we've been mostly outside of Edgemont. We've been looking at the municipalities immediately adjacent. So we went to Middletown Township and hiked with one of the landowners that was one of the original creators of the Darlington and Cornucopia trails in Middletown. Then we went to Thornberry Township, where we had a member of their EAC hike with us on the Lukenbach Trail and Bonner Park and talk about her role as an EAC member for her township. Then we did go to Ridley Creek State Park, keeping an Edgemont a little bit. We also went to Rushton Woods Preserve with Willistown Conservation Trust and had a member of Willistown Conservation Trust with us, telling us about land preservation and native plants and just being a wonderful tour guide as we walked. And most recently, we were at Hildesty Preserve in Marple with Natural Lands, where the preserve manager took our group on a wonderful evening walk last week. All of this with a goal to both get residents outside and appreciating the preserves, but also to make connections with our neighboring municipalities and these land conservation organizations. So that at the next step, our future goals, as Edgemont is rewriting its open space plan, we can hopefully provide a benefit to the township and saying, we have these residents who are interested in open space. We have these land conservation organizations that we've connected with and try to collaborate and bring all that together. We are very different from you guys in that we're totally not part of our municipal government right now. And so, maybe next year we will be, it's all a process. But we certainly think there's many people in Edgemont who care about trails and open space. And we're trying to let our township know that too. at this important time. When we look at future goals, we want to establish potentially new access points to Ridley Creek State Park. I'm sure you're all familiar with the park, but also that there's only a couple entry points, and it's surrounded by the most part, residential areas and neighborhoods. So to have access for neighbors who live close to the park. There's also a natural lands preserve behind the Edgemont Regal Shopping Center that no one knows about because it's a private preserve right now. There's no public access. It's potentially an option where we could work with the shopping center owner, the township, and natural lands to create a public access point into that preserve, which would be great. We also would definitely be willing and interested to work with you guys if you're looking at trails on the western end of Newtown along Crum Creek. We certainly could find residents in Edgemont who would support that and want to get involved. So we're very interested about that project. I know it's a long-term goal on your big map, but it's good to have goals, and we'd definitely be interested to help. And then, just to explore opportunities to work from within our township government, potentially if the township considered creating an EAC or a Parks and Rec commission, or even expanding our planning commission to have someone or someone's focused on trails and open space. So we're really excited to see that you guys, I know you're a new organization as well, so excited to see that happening in our neighboring township, and we'll keep working and look forward to working together.
That's great. I've had my eye on those natural lands trust parcels for quite a while. I actually talked with Oliver Bass on that. I would love to partner. We would love to partner with you guys and see what could be done to get to them, because we're hopefully going to have a trail that goes down right near the shopping center.
That's fantastic. And we are setting up a meeting. Basically, the preserve manager is interested. He needs to talk to his supervisor before he just shows up at a meeting with us and some of the other players. But the supervisor's on vacation, so we need to wait till he gets back from vacation. Otherwise, we are ready to start that discussion immediately. But knowing that it could connect somewhere else is even better.
Yeah, keep us in the loop.
Yeah, sure.
I think that's a prize. I don't know whether you walked those parcels. They're absolutely
I have not. Yeah,
fantastic.
cool. Yeah.
Just beautiful.
I grew up off of Goshen Road on Old Covered Bridge Road because it was so close to the covered bridge there. So I grew up right there, but
wow.
I've never been in there.
I mean, they used to have access going through a private drive on
Yes.
Goshen.
Yes.
And then somebody else bought the property. They did a survey and find out that natural lands property wasn't anywhere near it.
Right. And
So-
apparently Natural Lands had a priority to make that a public access point. They had a grant to put in a gravel parking lot. And so they do want to make the public that available to the public. So if they can do that from the Edgemont side, then they can still make the
Yeah.
space open.
Yeah, sounds great.
Yeah.
Okay,
Very good.
any questions?
Yeah, how do you get the word? Okay, we're telling people.
Facebook has been very helpful, but we also have a growing email list. We have maybe up to 285 emails, not all Edgemont, but it's all people that are interested in the mission and types of activities we're promoting. So, but Facebook really, I know you guys use Meetup, which I want to explore more because it looks like you've got a nice group with Meetup too. Yeah,
Which would be fun to work with you on
absolutely.
marketing.
Yeah. Actually, we would love to do a hike together with you, and you guys could pick the location, but maybe the Newtown, the Meadow Preserve, wherever you would think was appropriate, but we'd love to do a joint hike. That'd be great. Yeah.
Excellent.
Last question. You mentioned Hidalgo. Was it?
Hildesee.
Hildesee?
It's it's where Natural Lands headquarters is. So if it's in Marple Township, if you're on 252 about to go over the Springton Reservoir, take a left on Palmer's Mill Road, and it's right down there on the right. It's basically at the base of the dam and goes along Crum Creek. It's really, really beautiful. No, it's Marple.
It's not, but it's a great walk if you want to get out and do that walk. It's a beautiful location.
And I would be remiss if I did not mention that our next walk is a sunrise hike at Okahocking Preserve on Westchester Pike in Willistown next Saturday, June 25th. And you are all welcome to join. Anyone may join us.
Our next hike, July 3rd, Sunday at 12:30 at Drexel Law.
Excellent. Cool. I will be out of town, but
Most people.
Yeah.
Fun.
yes.
Okay, Thank you so much for coming. This was great.
We do have to run. We've got an Edgemont meeting that starts.
Oh,
in,
yeah.
13 minutes. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Letting us talk to you guys.
Okay, this was a good start. Thank you.
Thanks, sir.
We're on to new business now. 8.1, discussion and potential action on future trail walks. I'd like to connect that with 9.1, which is information on the hike on Goshen Trail on June 4. Terry McCarthy.
We had a nice group and it was a fabulous, beautiful day. And after the walk was done, we enjoyed Historic Day. A lot of people stayed for that. Was either on to other sites and so forth. So it was I thought it was fun. And we actually, the night before that, we had a table on opening day of the market. And Beth and Amy worked the table and I wandered around, but they got people to volunteer from that event. So that was a really positive scenario too. We had Friday night and Saturday.
You even had people with colonial garb on the
Oh,
wall.
we had some guy dressed up. Looked like an old Quaker.
He did. How about future trails?
That's what I wondered what you all would like to do about. Oh, that was our last one. And when I sent in the article to, I didn't have any additional events, so I just gave contact information. But what would people like to do about it? Want to do an August one? Is it hot?
I still think if we do an August one, just because of the heat, doing an evening walk would be good. You know, we got plenty of sun at the end of the day, but starting at like 5:30, 6 o'clock, and we could walk till 8 o'clock if we wanted to. So like a 2-hour stretch, and that way we don't have to worry about the heat.
One thing you might consider is have a walk in the sometime in the Newtown Meadow Preserve and bring chairs and sort of have a little meditation session at twilight.
Shall I just email everybody potential dates?
But we are on for July 3rd.
We're on for July. We don't have any further established dates for August, September, October.
All right. I'd like to move on to section 8.2, discussion and
Just real quick, if you're going to, I just want to be careful if you're going to set a date as a group, that you don't act as a group. Like if you're giving permission for somebody to set a date, I'm okay with that. But you can't, I just want to make sure that you don't send like emails around between yourselves to set the date, because then that becomes, that would be an issue of crossing the
Okay.
issue of the Sunshine Act. That's my only concern.
I'd like to make a motion to authorize Terry McCarthy to set dates during the summer for trail walks. Wait a
That's fine.
second. Moved and seconded. Any discussion?
Other groups like,
Yeah, you're permitted. The only issue is if you try to act as a group in making a decision about what you're going to do. So if you're saying, I mean, and I don't think anybody's going to take us to court over setting a date, but I'm trying to keep, I don't want to have that battle, and I don't want you to have that battle. So my preference is just what you guys did, was take the action to give Terry the authority to set the date and go ahead and I'm assuming that allows her not only to set the date, but the location. And then to go ahead and pull that together for any summer walks. And that'll give you time between now and the next meeting, if you want to think of some things for September or October timeframe, you're good. But if you want to bring another group in, that's not a problem, as long as this group is okay with that concept, then that's not a problem.
All in favor signify by saying aye. All opposed? Guys have it, motion approved. Next on the agenda is 8.2, discussion and possible action on signage, the Newtown Meadow Preserve.
So I filled out, so everyone should have it, and it's also in the minutes, potential signage options or word verbiage with ideal graphics or illustrations in there. I have not have that on. I have not gotten a chance to get back and walk the meadows again because I would like to add one more possibly towards the back of the preserve. I just need to get out there and see and kind of be inspired by what the next sign would be. But hopefully this gives us at least a good start on the signage. And so it's, what do you guys think? And like I said in the email that I sent out to everyone, just remember, typically when you're writing signs, you're focusing on 6th to 8th grade language. You want to keep it just a couple paragraphs because, imagine standing out there with screaming kids in the middle of the summer when it's, 95 degrees and humid. You're not going to have the patience to read that much. So keeping it short, direct. I had suggested, if we want to pin in botanical names of some of the plants specifically, I do think that's going to get a little wordy. So as another option, maybe have a pamphlet with some specific plants and animals that people can look for when they're walking that they could pick up at the kiosk in the beginning, maybe more beneficial than having it on the sign where it's not cluttering that up. So if people want that option, they have it. But I'm open to changes, trying to hit, kind of the history of the property a little bit, and then the different ecosystems and, some of the management techniques that may be happening. So people are prepared for what they're going to see, what changes they may see, and what the important stuff is in there.
Did you have did you have any feedbacks? People make any suggested changes?
You gave me, said cool. And Erin commented that she was interested in seeing the botanical names and maybe a little nod to the Trails and Greenways Committee. I'm a little bit hesitant to just give a nod just to our committee since that is part of, like Parks and Recreation and stuff like that. So I think as a township as a whole, like, hey, if you're interested in being involved, these are the different groups you can join or coordinate with type of deal, or, check out the township's website for a meeting that may be relevant to that, or something along those lines, not just picking out our committee, even though our committee is awesome.
Are those offerings here in final form? Would you like approval of that language?
Unless you guys have other suggestions, I'm good with what it says.
Okay. Any comments, any suggestions?
I had one question. Would this also be available on the sign as a QR code, so that somebody could then, like a lot of times I'll open up a QR code and then when I get home, I'll read more about it rather than sitting out in the sun. So I don't know whether we've done much with QR codes, but I certainly find that it gives the sign legs essentially.
And it could make it more accessible too. So if folks have trouble reading, but they can scan the QR code, then they can have a reader on their phone actually read the text to them. That could be helpful.
Yeah, like we did it there and that worked beautifully on the one that, thank you for preparing for the farmer's market. And like sign 5, for instance, it's going to be a long.
Yeah, that one
sign,
got a little
whether it
wordy.
Might break down, or again, it could be condensed and then you could read more through the QR code. But I'm certainly, I don't have the expertise that you do to sort of highlight the things. I feel very good that we have you providing the input.
In my experience, there is definitely a population that does not know how to use QR codes. So I would be hesitant to just do a very quick blurb and then, hey, for the rest of the sign, go to this QR code. So I would say, try to keep it intact as much as possible. But, I know George is waiting. I'm sorry.
It took me a while to figure it out, but I
Yeah.
got it. So anybody can do it.
Thank you. We have been using QR codes in the signage in the park system. As a matter of fact, the welcome signage at the Meadow Preserve entrance has a QR code that points you to the Meadow Preserve master plan. So you can read the entire master plan via the QR code, even though the welcome sign just has some initial information about it. There's a second sign over on the Episcopal side for folks that would kind of venture into the preserve from over there. So yeah, QR codes would be great. Beth, the one thing I noticed when I was looking at it today, and I apologize if I missed it, were there any graphics associated with it or not at this stage?
Not at this stage, because I know when we were talking kind of before, you're like, words maybe right now until we figure out graphic identity for the township. So I was trying to keep it, here's the words, and then these are my ideal graphics that I would like in there, or I think would fit. With that being said, if we did go the non-graphic route for beginning, if we're doing a temporary thing, sign number 4 that talks about the wildlife probably needs a little bit more oomph to it because it was kind of using that illustration or potential illustration to highlight the wildlife rather than spelling it all out in words.
Yeah, because I think there certainly has some graphic association with it, and I'll create some. We can create some directional signage as well for some of the. So this is informational.
Yeah,
for
and
people?
I did kind of do a little what I use, I Google Earth and traced out the trails that were on there. Hopefully that's as close as fairly accurate, and have kind of M's marked. I did not send this out and I apologize for that, of potential wayfinding signage. And that would be like, here's a map, here you are on that map, and there's the rest of the trail system. And it was basically at all the intersections. That way
Exactly.
people
And
know where they're
those
at.
signs can be reflective of the look of this signage.
Yeah, and those, I mean, they could be part of this, although I don't really see these as being at the intersections necessarily. I see them being placed elsewhere. So these would be the directional signs. I figured just a small map of the park, and then, where you are in relation to everything else, and nothing too fancy, just you are here.
It's cool that you made a point on there. I wonder if they would be either graphics or alongside, well, you talk about milkweed and there's a lot of kinds, like little blue something.
Oh, the little blue stem, which is a type of grass. It's a native grass. I'm sorry, there's blue star Amsonia, which is also native, and I was trying to remember which one I mentioned in there, possibly both. In a perfect world, I would go out, or we would go out with George and kind of pick where those signs would be, and they would be placed near those plants that are growing naturally in the area. So like if there's a clump of milkweed, we're putting near that clump of milkweed. Kind of picking and choosing, putting it by the cattails, by the wetland area. So the plants are nearby, and then hopefully the signs will have illustrations so people know, like, oh, that's that plant that we're talking about right there. So trying to make that connection on the sign and in real life.
The EAC does and stuff. Have like an add that, right?
I mean, we've done that with some trees. I don't know that we've done it with native plants that I can think about, but we have done some demonstrations with native plants so that people would know what they were, labeled them, so that people could take that information and go to their local store and look at doing those purchases. But the only thing that we've ever sold would be the trees that we've gotten for the purpose of increasing our tree population.
And I don't know if others, I found it when I moved here, native plants were very important to me. There's a place in Media that is exclusively native plants. She runs it out of her backyard. It's a corner lot and it's a house there, and she has only natives. I forget the thing, but yeah, I just thought it was cool that someone has established themselves with that thing in mind. Yeah.
And these are for sale, they're back there.
They're for sale.
Wow.
Yeah, yeah. And I can look it up and find it, but
Yeah,
it's a
I'd like to
wonderful,
know.
it'd be a nice resource to include in some future flyers.
Yeah, that's Redbud.
Redbud, yes.
And it's
Mhm.
actually listed on the Pennsylvania native plant DCNR thing. because they say, where do you buy native plants and red buds on?
Yeah, and they're very, if you want to go for a little science lesson, they're very, very knowledgeable. Yeah, that was one thing I was struck by the Connect Edgemont, their little Facebook pages. They listed a number of resources, and George, I'm sure we do too, but I thought, boy, to the extent that we can start pointing to some of these collections that others have done, it was.
Yeah, the one thing that we're
impressive.
really careful about as the township is we don't mind necessarily pointing to a not-for-profit that we're supporting, but we get very concerned about pointing to businesses. You know, we have a guideline that if you're advertising with us or something like that, or for us, or doing something for us, we don't mind, you know, saying this group has supported us this way. But to start listing businesses, it then becomes, are we picking businesses? And then if somebody has a bad experience, are we then responsible? So we're really careful about that. So that would be my only comment that I would make, not discouraging it, just saying we may have some guidelines that we would work in on that. The one thing that I would make note that I think that you've mentioned on here about this, you've really come up with some suggestions of illustrations. I definitely think we want to make sure we get those on these signs, because I think that it increases, and I'm going to say the readability, or at least the willingness to read it. If you see some pictures, you can break up some of the text with the pictures, and then we can talk about how we brand it separate and apart from that. But if we kind of build it without the branding first and then do that. But
And I wasn't sure what the process was for that. If that's something that like you would put out to bid and have like an illustrator come in and create that, or something that we'd look to pull from public domain, or if we wanted to go like photograph route, which could be tough for.
yeah, so
like,
we're
of them.
working with the EAC's working on a project now to do just over here and over here, both. Yeah. So, we put in the rain garden over here, and we put in the plantings over in our park across the way. And so I would suggest that maybe have a quick conversation with Cindy Mahalo from the EAC, as she's working with an organization to help us do that. I think it would be appropriate to do the same kind of thing here, where it might be, we get the concept a little bit further down, get some ideas of, like, here's the picture of the milkweed, here's the picture of this, and then we turn it over to them to kind of help us get the actual design done.
Okay. any other
But this is
discussion?
good.
That too, if you guys can hear me, this is Erin. The feedback I had sent to Beth was that her descriptions are great. And if we can keep it somewhat brief, I agree with adding in an illustration, and then where we can for elaboration, do a QR code, whether it's for the botanical name, if it's a sign that's near that area that they're walking through on the trail. But if they want further info, then they can, take a picture of a QR code and be taken to further information on the web. And then the other piece of feedback I gave was just to keep it consistent with whatever the look and feel is of the existing signs. And I think they say now, you're entering, private land, you're exiting public land, and it says Township of Newtown on the bottom. So not specifically a nod to our committee, but just to Newtown Township, that I hope you're enjoying this beautiful unspoiled natural land in Newtown Township.
Okay, very good. I'd like to make a motion to approve the language in Beth Junchish's signs with such changes and illustrations as Ms. Junchisha may elect to add in her own discussion. Second.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any further board discussion?
Just a question, what's the next step? Then it goes to the Board of Supervisors or whatever, or what's the process here? Yeah. And then is it funded? Do we have funding?
I think we have some funds set aside for this specifically, and we'll have to see how far it goes. But Yeah, so the next step would be, I think we want to get a little bit more with the illustrations of whatever we're going to do with that. And then take the concept to the board, just make sure they understand where we're headed. If they have any comments that they'd like to make, anything they'd like to see different than what we're doing so far, and then move forward.
Did the Trails Commission get $5,000 for the approved for use? I know we had requested it. I don't know whether it ever went through or not
Can't remember what we set aside. Do you remember?
in the budget.
I know there was something set aside. I don't remember I know there was something set
Okay.
aside. I don't remember the exact number. I'd have to look.
Okay, all in favor signify by saying aye. All opposed? The ayes have it, motion approved. Moving on, new business 8.3, discussion and possible action on alternate extensions of the Newtown Meadow Preserve Trail. I received a request from 2 supervisors to put a hold on the temporary trail. They were getting a lot of complaints from Echo Valley residents. And I think they would prefer that we put that on hold for the time being.
Elaborate on that.
Well, they had mentioned to me that they did get pushback. They were called directly. And their concern, I think, was primarily parking. But I think that sometime in the past, there was some thought from Echo Valley that they didn't want anybody coming through their property, even though it was on a temporary basis. So I think we have to respect that for the time being. Maybe we can pivot on this, and thought was maybe go to the listener board and see what they might be willing to do, possibly a trail through the woods. And I understand, Steve, that was already on your agenda at some point.
Yes.
Okay. Do you want people to join you, or is that going to?
Well, let me get my first meeting with them. I just haven't even had
Okay.
my first meeting with them
Okay.
yet, and then we could come back.
Yeah. I mean, if they would approve that, that would be better than the alternative anyway. So I think we have to pivot a little bit and try to move toward that particular goal. Okay, on to old business. 9.2.
So I'm looking at the map here and it shows Newtown Meadow Preserve. Is there a road Springwater Lane?
Yes.
Yes.
At the end of that, there's no ownership of land, right? It just goes right into the Meadow Preserve, doesn't it?
That's
I
where
don't
we're
think it
planning
goes right to
go.
the Meadow Preserve. I think it goes right onto Lissitor property.
Okay.
It's not a,
John's,
it's not a direct connect at that location.
Understood.
as John was just saying, that residents didn't want people on their property. It's not their property. The plan that was being there is then dead ends into Lissitor owned property. So the next conversation was to have with Lissitor, would we be able to have a trail that goes through their property to the Meadow Preserve? There's no private ownership, as we know it, of any of the property that we would be accessing. But the residents who live there, apparently, I just heard about this from John, but apparently there's resistance there from the neighbors on either side of that dead end at the street. There's no private ownership of that land.
Okay, Joe. All right. Moving on, old business, 9.2, update information on presentation to the supervisors on committee accomplishments and priorities. And introducing Friends of Marple Newtown Trails. Now, I did this on May 23rd. I've included a transcript of my talk online. And I think it was well received. Leonard Altieri praised this group for accomplishing a lot in a short period of time. So I think that was good. Doug Humes talked about the Friends of Marple Newtown Trails. And the upshot was that we would come up with projects and Friends would come up with projects and would have to go before the supervisors for approval. And we also talked, George, we had talked about, things that the Friends could immediately do to help. And I think, Beth, you talked about training of these people.
Yeah, I know in the past, kind of me, Amy, and Terry were talking about volunteer stuff and making sure that they had proper training, working with George for that, and making sure, trying to get a core group that we could trust to go out there to do the stuff we want in a safe manner and know what to do and what plants to touch and what not to touch and all that fun stuff.
Could you three start prepping for that, getting that together?
I think so, yeah. It's just a matter of meeting with George too and finding out what really needs to be done and what you want us to focus on with that group. I have some thoughts from working with some volunteer groups and doing some trail work, and I'm sure you guys probably have some thoughts too. But
Yeah, I had one idea. I mean, 30 years ago in my youth, I started planting daffodils along the Goshen Road Trail, which are still amazingly enough coming up. What about if we got the Friends group to plant 250 daffodils along Goshen Road? That sound like
could I suggest a native plant instead?
I know.
Yes.
something that, I mean, I know the daffodils are beautiful, but
Yeah.
I mean, maybe we could do some spring blooming native plants or something that will last a little bit further into the summer and give
Okay.
some pollinators.
I
something.
think perhaps we can do a combination.
Okay.
I think a combination sounds good, but to do something, the native plant, like asters, that is really big and
Mhm.
spread, so that they will take up some of that erosion problem too, that you see on the trail.
And asters would be great. They don't grow well in the shade except for
No,
a
it's
few.
Well, there's wood asters
Wood
that
asters.
Okay,
would.
that's good.
And they tend to be
Mhm.
fall blooming when they're kind of one of the last food sources for a lot of pollinators. So they are a nice choice.
Okay.
You could do spring stuff like wild geraniums or native phloxes or bloodroot or, Jacob's ladder or Jack in the Pulpit. I mean, there's a variety that you can plant. So you could, mix it up. So there's something interesting to see along the trail throughout the summer. The big thing is sourcing that, and because it would have to be live plants, not bulbs for most of that, making sure that there's a schedule for watering and stuff to make sure that they can survive. So it would take a little bit more work than the bulbs, to be honest, but
Okay,
I think in the
okay.
end, it's the benefit outweighs the hassle.
Yeah, I guess my bulbs will just have to survive.
I'm sorry.
I would just make note also that when we pass the native plant ordinance in town, I mean, there is some restrictions on what we can do on township property based on that. And so we'd have to review that before we made any decision in regards to whether we could add daffodils to the mix, because we've not only encouraged that native plants be done on private property, but we've actually set some guidelines as to the percentage of native plants that have to be planted if we're doing township projects. So I just would make note to that as I just want to make sure we follow through with all of those pieces as you think about that.
Do we have any relationships with like any of the I know some, what am I trying to say? I don't know if it was state or if it was private organization. Native plants, and so like they would give you discounts on like bulk purchases and stuff like that. Does the township have any existing relationship or anything like that?
Yeah, I'm not aware of one that the township has. I'm
Okay.
sure we could, if we find a nursery and or a supplier, or however that's done, we can obviously build that relationship.
I would have to go back and look, but I think the state at one point was offering, like for private landowners, if you had, I think it was like a quarter acre or something, it wasn't that much, like they would help offset some of the costs and stuff like that. So I didn't know if like the township could take advantage of any programs like that.
There's some opportunities with trees, but there aren't with native plantings and those kind of things. Native trees, yes, but not the plantings. And so that's something we'd have to explore.
Yeah.
I give you an organization that could probably give you, and they also have a monthly subscription program that's brand new, so that every month you get a different native plant, and they come in packs. Because I just got my second one of 50.
Oh, wow.
And they will also analyze your environment and suggest the right ones for the right, so you have a successful.
Oh, that's great.
Who are they, Terry?
Wild Lawn, WILD, wildlawn.com. Full disclosure, my daughter works there. So discount.
As long as it's not a 5-fingered one, we're okay.
No, they make you pay for it, but it is the difference between, a wholesale price for that and what it's.
And I also grow wildflowers in my basement. I've been fairly successful. I don't say that to the mix. So Beth, could you come up with a list?
Yeah, I mean, I would like to see the township's
Yeah.
native plant
Uh-huh.
thing too, because we'd probably end up just
That would be
pulling
the
stuff from
first
there.
step. The next step would be to dovetail with the
Yeah.
tree committee.
You want me to come up with a shopping list for plants? I think I can handle that one.
Do a walk and plant, like a monthly walk and plant depending on the plant.
Erin, did you have something to say?
No,
Okay. Anything else on 9 point? Okay. Moving on. 9.3, discussion and potential action on Trails Committee mission. This is something we started on last month, and Steve Bradley was nice enough to take good notes and put it down on a list. That is what we've done so far. Everybody read that.
Question, John, I missed the last meeting because of personal matters, but how does that compare to the thing that was passed out at the market? It's called Trails and Greenways Committee, and it lists our committee will be moving forward too, and it lists things that don't seem to align. So I just didn't know how that document
Okay.
came about and how it aligns, not questioning it, but just wondering what are the two documents?
Okay. This was something that we had done in the past. Yeah. Yeah, I made some additions to that. That's a probably a good thing to add to it. Any comments on what we have up? Any changes you may want to make? Any additions? What we can do, I can get this out to everybody. And it might help a little bit, and then maybe we can talk about it at next month's meeting.
I have one process question, Stephen, just as we write things like missions, does it have to reflect the fact that we're not, we can't decide anything, so we review, we evaluate, but we have to present it, of course, to the Board of Supervisors. But in creating documents like that, is a reference needed to the fact that we would ultimately be making recommendations to the board as opposed to our own decision-making body?
I think it would depend on more of what it is than what the activity is versus what the, so for example, I think when you look at, and I don't know that it's up here, but when you look at your monthly trail walks, continue to promote public trail walks within the community. I don't think you need to say that's advisory. I think that that's an actual action that you're doing. And so I don't think that's a problem. Whereas when you say review and evaluate land development, and that's one where you're saying and recommend ways to make sure that the mission of who you are is carried out. That's where that recommendation piece would come.
Because if I were a developer and got a hold of the mission of that, if this were published, I'd go, whoa, wait a minute, so I just wanted
I'm getting into the habit of when we meet with developers ahead of time saying, this is, your plan is going to be evaluated by the Planning Commission. But in addition to that, the Trails and Greenways Committee is going to look at it. The EAC is going to look at it. The Shade Tree Commission is going to look at it. Planning and the Shade Tree Commission both have paid consultants that are helping us do that, but the others are volunteers. And so there'll be suggestions made that will be a part of that process. And so, I'm informing them along the way that they can expect that as part of the process. That doesn't mean one will come in and I won't have had a chance to talk to them ahead of time. Some people don't come to us first and go right, they don't come in and meet with staff before they go that far. But anybody that does, I share that with them.
Any other discussion on the mission? Hearing none, let's move on. 9.4, update information on Stony Knoll and Aronimick plan reviews. Anthony DiVincenzo is away on business, so I'm postponing this until the next meeting. 9.5, update information on the rail trail feasibility study. Joe Falcon.
We approved a criteria for an RFP. We had 2 consultants submit bids. We interviewed both of them based off the criteria we decided to go with or recommend to Board of Supervisors, Simone Collins, which they were approved. And as of right now, my understanding is the contract is with the township solicitor to approve that. Once that's done, we will get together with Simone Collins and start initial meetings discussing the logistics and the plan moving forward with priority of what our criteria was.
I would just add for that is that the board last night actually approved the contract adjustment. And so that was an additional $4,000 added to the contract in order to accomplish what we understood the committee was looking for. And so we are ready to move forward.
Glad to see that's moving forward. Great.
I would make note also that for this committee that we had a member of that committee drop off. There's been a replacement person brought on. And so that person, or I say brought on, has been appointed. And so that person will be joining the committee.
Okay, moving on, 9.6, update information on the Reese's Run Greenway Trail. No information on this at this time. Are there any other items to come before the meeting? Any items for the next agenda?
Do we have another speaker?
Not pending. Any ideas?
Daughter. Fine either way. She's a member of the EAC Wallingford.
I think that would be a great talk.
Yeah.
I would just make and I'm fine with that if you want to do that. I think what you want to think about in your meetings, because one of the things I'm going to be recommending and going particularly into 2023 is that committee meetings be kept to an hour and a half, because I'm going to try to double up in a night when we have committee meetings, just so that the staff is not out so many nights, because we're adding another committee at this point. I mean, I'm one more behind that I know is being added, which is going to take us to about 12 committees. And so I'm trying not to have staff out so many nights. And so one of the thoughts that I would recommend is that if you're having somebody come in and do a presentation to you, that if it's related to what it is that's your real agenda as an organization, then maybe it goes a little longer. But if you're having just somebody come in and give us a talk on something that may be of interest to multiple groups, so like this one, I could see that the EAC might be interested, our Parks group might be interested. My recommendation might be that if you're going to have that kind of talk, or maybe a group of talks that are related to that, is put them together and let's have an evening where somebody comes in and talks and does that. And you're not necessarily taking your meeting time for that purpose. And that's just my recommendation. I think that it's important when you have groups that are coming in to talk about something that's directly related to decisions that you're going to make. That's very important to do so that you can make a decision. So the presentation is about what you're doing. But if the presentations start moving outside of that, or are multi-group presentations, my recommendation would be, we'll bring them in, we'll set them up, but they can come in and do an evening, and maybe you have 2 or 3 speakers on 2 or 3 different topics. And anybody who's interested can come, but it's not necessarily going to be something that changes your decision as a group for what you're doing. That's just my only comment that I would make to that.
Any other board comment? Any public comment? Hearing none, do I hear a motion for adjournment? Second? All in favor signify by saying aye. All opposed? Ayes have it. Meeting is adjourned.